The rain was falling in heavy sheets against the cracked windowpane of the old farmhouse, wind howling through the creaking boards as if nature itself wanted to warn him of what was coming. Matthew Carter, a quiet man who had chosen solitude after a life full of heartbreak, sat alone by the dim fire, staring at the flames. The storm outside seemed endless, until suddenly, a faint sound broke through the roar of rain and thunder. It was not the wind. It was not an animal. It was a voice, trembling, urgent, and full of fear. "Please, please don't let them find me." He turned toward the door, his heart pounding. The voice had come from just beyond it, fragile and desperate, like someone fighting their last hope. He pulled the door open, and in the shadow of the porch light stood a young woman, drenched and shaking, her eyes wide with terror. Her hair clung to her face, her clothes torn and soaked through, and she looked as though she had run for miles. Before she collapsed onto the wooden floor of his porch, she whispered the words again, barely audible, "Please, don't let them find me." And from that moment, Matthew's world changed forever. Sparkles, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of helping someone when they need it most, please take a second to like this video, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to Kindness Tales. Your support helps us spread stories that touch hearts and remind the world of compassion. Sparkles. Matthew knelt down beside her, carefully lifting her into his arms. She was light, too light, as though life had already stripped her of more than she could bear. He carried her inside, laying her near the warmth of the fire. Her lips were pale, her breath uneven, and he could see the bruises on her wrists, deep, dark marks that told a story of chains, of suffering, of running from something no one should ever face. He wrapped her in a blanket, whispered that she was safe, though he didn't yet know from what. As the storm raged outside, Matthew tried to understand what had just happened. He had not seen another soul near his farmhouse in weeks. He had chosen this life, far from the noise of the world, because the world had already taken too much from him. Years ago, Matthew had lost his wife in a tragic accident, and with her went every piece of joy he once knew. Since then, he had lived quietly, growing vegetables, repairing his fence, tending to the silence. But now, here was this stranger, trembling in his care, asking for protection. When she awoke hours later, her eyes darted around the room, still full of panic, until they landed on him. She pulled the blanket closer, as though afraid even of kindness. Matthew simply nodded, keeping his distance, giving her space. Finally, with a voice barely above a whisper, she spoke. "My name is Anna." That was all she said at first. He didn't press her. He brought her warm soup and bread, and she ate as though she had not tasted food in days. The rain had stopped by then, but the storm inside her was far from over. Each sudden creak of the old farmhouse made her flinch. Each shadow of the trees outside the window seemed to send a shiver through her body. She was running from something, or someone, and Matthew knew he had just made a silent promise: whatever haunted this young woman, it would not reach her here. The days that followed were uneasy. Anna spoke little, often sitting near the fire with faraway eyes, staring at nothing. Sometimes she would wake in the middle of the night, crying silently, clutching her blanket as though holding on to life itself. Matthew, who had spent years avoiding the pain of human connection, now found himself watching over her, tending to her wounds, giving her what safety he could. Slowly, piece by piece, she began to open up. Anna had grown up in a broken world. Her father had abandoned her when she was a child, and her mother had remarried a man who brought only darkness into their lives. That man, cruel and controlling, had dragged Anna into a cycle of abuse and fear. When she tried to escape, he hunted her down. He kept her hidden from the world, isolated, powerless. Until one night, she broke free. She ran, through back roads and forests, with nothing but desperation guiding her steps. That was how she had found Matthew's farmhouse, a flicker of light in the storm, the last place she had strength to reach. Hearing her story shook Matthew in ways he hadn't expected. He saw in her pain the reflection of his own, the loneliness, the feeling of being trapped in grief, unseen by the world. For years, he had hidden himself away because life had hurt too much. Now, here was someone else hiding not from grief, but from cruelty itself. And somehow, her presence lit a spark in him again. The weeks turned into months. Matthew taught Anna how to tend the garden, how to repair the old fences, how to gather wood for the fire. Slowly, her laughter began to return, small at first, but real. She found comfort in the silence that once suffocated him, and together they began to build a quiet rhythm of life. But shadows still lingered. Sometimes, she would pause while working in the garden, her eyes scanning the horizon as though expecting someone to appear. And sometimes, at night, she would whisper, "Promise me you won't let them find me." Matthew promised. Yet one autumn afternoon, as the golden leaves fell around the farmhouse, the past came knocking. A car pulled up the dirt road, an unfamiliar sight in that isolated place. Anna froze, her face draining of color. From the window, Matthew saw two men step out, their sharp eyes scanning the property. Their presence was not friendly. One of them called out, his voice low but commanding, "We're looking for someone. A young woman. She belongs with us." Matthew's heart raced. He glanced at Anna, who was trembling, tears filling her eyes. She shook her head, whispering again the words that had started it all. "Please don't let them find me." In that moment, Matthew knew there was no going back. He opened the door and stepped outside, blocking the entrance with his body. He told the men they had no business here, that they needed to leave. They pressed harder, insisting they had rights, that she was theirs to take. But Matthew, who had once let life break him, now stood firm. He had lost too much to fear, and he would not let this broken soul be dragged back into darkness. Eventually, after tense words and the clear sight of Matthew's determination, the men left, their tires kicking up dust as they drove away. Matthew returned inside to find Anna collapsed on the floor, sobbing. He knelt beside her, holding her, whispering that it was over, that they would not take her. And in that embrace, something shifted. Anna realized she was no longer alone. Matthew realized he had found purpose again. Two broken lives had collided, not by chance, but by something greater, perhaps fate, perhaps the simple courage of survival. From then on, Anna began to heal more openly. She wrote in a journal Matthew gave her, pouring out the years of silence. She painted the walls of the farmhouse with color, bringing life where there had been none. And Matthew, who had once believed his story was finished, found himself laughing again, dreaming again, living again. The farmhouse, once a place of sorrow, became a sanctuary. Time moved forward, and the shadows of Anna's past grew more distant. There were still days when fear would creep in, but now she had someone to stand with her. Together, they built a life out of kindness, trust, and quiet strength. And though the scars of the past would never fully vanish, they discovered that scars could also be proof of survival, proof of endurance, proof of strength. Years later, the farmhouse would be remembered not just as a lonely man's retreat, but as the place where a lost soul found safety, where kindness triumphed over cruelty, where brokenness was not the end but the beginning of healing. Rose, if this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Kindness Tales, and share it with someone who might need hope today. Together, we can keep spreading light in a world that often feels too dark. Rose. And before you go, we'd love to hear from you. What does kindness mean to you? Please comment below and share your thoughts. We read every word, and your voices matter. Because sometimes, a single act of kindness can change not just one life, but two.